So we've taken this. So as it stands, there's no charge against Honorable Mama Yariga.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. Together we can. It started as a campaign pledge to set up an office to deal with corruption. It materialized and then gained government some plaudits when it announced a member of the opposition party, Martin Amidu, as special prosecutor in 2018. Now, Mr. Amidu, as at November 2020, when he resigned over disagreement with government, had only managed to file 2 cases in court, all against Boku Central MP Mahama Yariga. The MP was set free by the High Court this year when it ruled that the Office of Special Prosecutor had failed to prove a case against the MP, leaving 1 case outstanding. Now, the new Special Prosecutor, Kise Jabin, has today also chosen to abandon this case, as well as insisting pursuing it will be, quote, a complete waste of time. Listen.
Submission of no case to answer. It will be a complete waste of time if we were to open this case further and go to the length where it will only be dismissed on the submission of no case to answer. So having re-examined the docket, gone through it, we've taken this decision. So as it stands, there's no charge against Honorable Mama Yariga. There's no count against him.
It mainly had to do with the tax evasion issues.
That was the first one.
That was the first one.
That was the first one. This had to do with
the purchase of.
This had to do mainly with using public office for private benefits. Most of the counts are similar like that. It runs along these lines.
And Council, you are saying that after reviewing it, you think that it's not appropriate?
Not that I think. We have entered a nolle prosequi. That is to say, we've ended the case this morning. We've discontinued it. There's no charge against Honorable Mama Yariga's stance.
We'll get into the cases that Matamidu has filed shortly and what has happened to them, and we compare to the investment that are gone in under his tenure. But we got some reaction from Mr. Yariga and his lawyers today.
It was just inconceivable to proceed with this prosecution. And so, it has not come to us as a surprise that the new special prosecutor has decided in good conscience to file a nolle prosequi. And rightly so, he indicated that the evidential standard required in a criminal trial is proof beyond reasonable doubt. And he's unable to do that with the evidence available. We are grateful to him, and we are grateful to the courts for what has happened today.
If I remember correctly, this disclosure...
Also, in addition,
yes,
the tax evasion charges
was all those
the
matters.
customs officers came and, the customs officers' statements
were very germane.
Were clearly,
very germane.
Exonerated.
So, obviously, like the SP rightly pointed out, that the evidence they have, in order to meet the evidential burden that's proved beyond reasonable doubt, it was going to be a huge task. We are grateful to him. We are grateful.
I just wanted to find out from Mr. Yariga. This is evidence that clearly was in the custody of the former special prosecutor.
We don't want to.
But nonetheless,
we do not want a conversation that turns this one into him and then the previous special prosecutor.
But there's an issue clearly of a decision that was taken, the decision to prosecute him, if indeed there was evidence available that exonerated.
What is important is that a new special prosecutor has taken a decision. That decision is well grounded in law, and we want a conversation to end there.
Well, Joseph Akable is my court correspondent, joins us on the telephone line right now. Joseph, so Martin Amidu's tenure saw the filing of 2 cases at the courts. Walk us through those 2 cases. Of course, the last of which we've now seen the final nail in its coffin, but there was a first one. What was it?
So the first one was the Republic versus Mahama Yariga and 6 others. That one specifically had to do with the importation of an ambulance that was procured for the municipal assembly in this area, and the concern had been raised about procurement matters aside from the fact that it had been branded in a manner that had suggested that personal funds had been used. And so there were issues that were being raised about whether a public office had been used for private gain, among others. And so that particular matter is the case that after the state had finished its side of the story, Mr. Ayariga's lawyers filed a submission of no case, which was upheld by the court, saying that there's no case for the MP to answer. And so Mr. Ayariga and the 6 others who were accused were all acquitted and discharged by the court. And so that was the first case that was dealt with. Now the second one is that of the Republic versus Mahama Ayariga and Kendrick Maff, who is a businessman. Now this particular matter is what the current special prosecutor has decided to discontinue. Now this case has to do with an agreement between Parliament and a bank for MPs to be given funds to purchase vehicle as the loan, as the official vehicle. Now, what happened was that according to Mr. Amidu, per the documents that he filed, he says the MP connived with a businessman who made representations that the supplier going to get a car for the MP, and rather than, after he had acquired the money from the bank, made the money available to the MP, who now used the money to proceed to purchase 3 other vehicles, which he sold. And so the accusation was that he had used a public office for private gain. And so that was the case that was put before the court, and disclosures were done. That was the state that it got to, and the expectation was that the state was going to go ahead with this case. And this morning, when we got to court, Mr. Kisei Jabin, the new special prosecutor, informed the judge that he intends to discontinue the case, and so that matter was also struck out. And in terms of his explanation to us, that is what he indicates, that it's as a result of the fact that he has analyzed the evidence that is available, and he says that the state cannot meet that threshold. And knowing very well what happened in the previous case, that is the ambulance one, he says this one was likely to suffer the same fate, for which reason he has decided to abandon that particular case.
I mean, and the new special prosecutor has some pretty strong words to describe his decision to do this today, saying that if he had pursued it, it would simply be, quote, a complete waste of time. I mean, considering the fact that we've been digging into the work of Matamidu whilst he was there, and the amount of money and that was devoted to the cause, it sounds a pretty harsh verdict on the work that he did, seeing that this were the only 2 fruits of the investments that we've been tracking.
In fact, by way of the fruits, actually, in terms of complaints that went to the office, so we've been looking at the medium-term expenditure framework for the Office of the Special Prosecutor. These are documents that are published on the Finance Ministry's website, and we looked at that of 2021 and that of 2020. If you look at those 2 documents, in terms of the reports from the Office of the Special Prosecutor, it indicates that they received as many as 60 complaints. So for 2020, 46, and for 2020, 46, then you had the previous year, you had 14 of them coming in. So about 60 complaints over the period that's under review, and just 2 of them were matters that were investigated and got to the level that he decided to proceed to court. And now they've come up to this level. By way of the financials that we are looking at between the period of 2018 to 2020, it comes to a total of 30.5 million cedis that have been expended. For 2018, just an amount of 1 million cedis. Obviously, the office had just started in 2019 at 28.8 million cedis, and 2020 at 625,417 Ghana cedis. And in terms of even the 2021 document, it interestingly makes the point that the inability of the OSP to move into its allocated office in the previous year, that is for 2020, is cited as an issue that affected performance. It is repeated in the other documents again to make the point that he basically did not have the full complement of his staff to undertake the work. But nonetheless, portions of the document still makes the point that they consider the office to be very important. The race procurement issue, just reading directly from a portion of the document, it says it was anticipated that the office of the accommodation will be ready and the full complement of the 249 staff employed and the office fully operationalized in the year 2020. However, this has not been fulfilled, and the situation has placed a lot of limitation on performance. And so this in essence is what may have accounted for what you have seen so far. But in terms of the financials, we are looking at a region of 13.5 million cedis, and mainly they've gone into salaries and an attempt to set the office from the initial stages. But we know that since the new special prosecutor took office, he has announced via their social media handles that they've actually moved into a new office location, and he had also indicated publicly that is awaiting a board to be in place to undertake a recruitment into the setup as well.
Joseph, fantastic work as always. Thank you very much. Now, we'll talk to Mahama Yariga's lawyers very shortly and hear from the anti-corruption coalition, because they themselves had raised issues with the pace of work under the former SP. But Mr. Yariga had granted me an interview last year on this very matter, and he was very consistent in maintaining his innocence in the matter, insisting that Martha Medu was witch hunting him. But you remember that Martha Medu had described him as his son. He was wondering why a man he acknowledges as his father will be what he called persecuting him. And he had maintained that the court will eventually clear him, as we know the court did so in the first case. Now the special prosecutor had decided to discontinue the other one. He says, he told me last year that he's since forgiving Martin Amidu.
That's why I see him as a father, because of his relationship with my father.
That hasn't changed in spite of your trouble.
No, it hasn't changed at all. It's unfortunate what he's doing.
What is he doing?
Well, prosecuting me on the basis of the facts that he has, which I also have. I don't think that those facts warrant prosecution. Purchased an ambulance for the constituency, and I wasn't even the only person involved in the entire process. The municipal chief executive, assemblyman, the coordinating directors, and etc. And clearly, the pricing of the ambulance, the price was based on the customs declared value of the ambulance. So you can see that this person is not looking for the truth.
What is he looking for?
This person is not out there to do justice. This person is just looking for Ayerga.
Why?
And thinks he has found Ayerga.
Why?
But I have confidence in the courts. I believe that the courts will do the right thing.
Why would the father do that to his son?
Take the vehicles. Take the vehicles that I evaded customs duty. I said, no, I didn't evade customs duty. I was given a tax exemption. A letter was given to that effect, assessing the duty at 36,000. Then you know that in this country, if you import a car, you cannot clear the car yourself. You have to give it to an agent.
True.
So I gave the documents to an agent and handed the money, 36,000, to the agent. The agent goes to the customs. The customs tell the agent that no, we've checked our system and the assessment by finance ministry is wrong. The actual duty you should be paying is 6,000. Agent brings me back my 30,000. Later on, it is found out that the duty that was paid was wrong. It is actually 36,000. What do? You call me, you ask me to bring the difference. This man decides that he has to prosecute me. And I laugh. Why do I laugh? I laugh because, one, it is the customs officers
you
who
call him
assess
this
the value.
Man. This is your
person
you say your father.
Okay, my father. Yeah, my father. Sorry, my father. He decides that he wants to prosecute me. I laugh at it because, really, the customs officers, they did the assessment of the duty. They assessed the duty. And so if you are prosecuting me in court, I will bring them to come and testify. Did I come to them? No. As we speak, I still don't even know them. I only see their names on documents and correspondences, but I don't even know any of the customs officers personally. But we will subpoena them as witnesses. If I've ever approached them to even clear a vehicle, I've never. It's an agent. And you know, very interesting, all lawyers who are listening to us will tell you that you probably should not even be prosecuting me alone. You should be prosecuting me, the agent, and the customs officer. Because there's no way I, the owner of the vehicle, who never dealt directly with the customs officer, you can easily succeed in court against me when you haven't brought in the agent. And I can say on authority that the customs officer did appear before the special prosecutor's office interrogators and indicated very clearly that they don't know me. They've never dealt with me, which is true.
Because they dealt with the agent.
They dealt with the agent. And they did admit that it is a common practice that sometimes they make mistakes in assessing the values of vehicles and the duties that should be paid on them. In spite of this evidence, my father still insists on prosecuting me.
It begs the question, why would a father do that to a son?
And that is the question you should ask him. Go and ask him, why would you do that to somebody you describe as your son?
Yeah, he did. In fact, he was the first to say
He was the
this
first to describe
publicly.
me as a son. So ask him, why would you do that to somebody you describe as your son? What is the basis?
You've said in this interview that it can't possibly be because he's seeking justice. If that's not what it is, what it is? What is it?
Because knowing the lawyer that he is, okay, I assume that he also appreciates the fact that to proceed to, let's say, prosecute me on a charge of abuse of office for personal gain for branding a vehicle, knowing the lawyer that he is, I assume that he has to prove that I branded the vehicle or that the vehicle was branded on my instruction. Okay. But in a clear situation where I actually didn't brand it, I know who branded it, and I told her it was Mr. A who branded it. And you don't even make the effort to find out from Mr. A whether he branded it and why he branded it. Clearly, to me, you're not seeking justice. You're not. You're not seeking to do justice.
What is it? What would you call this then?
Well, maybe a father finding a way to teach his son how to live and the lessons of life. I don't know, but I don't believe that that's justice.
Is it a witch hunt?
I feel hunted. There's no doubt about that. Whether he's a witch is another matter, but I feel hunted.
There's a close line. If it's not prosecution, it's persecution. Is it persecution?
I have no doubt that this is persecution. I have no doubt. This is persecution.
This is a relationship that is broken down. Honestly speaking, is it?
Yes, it has to be.
But will you forgive Mati Amidou?
Me? I have forgiven him.
So that is Bahama Yerga speaking to me last year in May in reaction to the ongoing prosecutions. Then today, both cases have ended. I want to bring in his lawyer, Ediju Tamaklu. Mr. Tamaklu, thank you for your time here on Top Story.
Yeah, Evans, good evening, and good evening to your cherished viewers or listeners.
Mama Yerga must be a happy man tonight. This was him last year, insisting he was innocent. And this year, the court agreed with him, and appears the special prosecutor, the new one, has also endorsed his position he's long held. How does he feel tonight?
Well, Evans is just imagining the sword of Damocles taking over your head. Yeah, remember that the investigation prior to the prosecution in 2019 started somewhere in 2018. It's instructive to note that the cars that he purchased for his parliamentary use have all been impounded by the Economic and Organized Crime Office and subsequently by the Office of the Special Prosecutor, all this year. It's almost 4 years now that these cars have been impounded. What is instructive is that he has been paying the car loan every month from his salary. So you can imagine the inconvenience knowing that at the end of the month you are paying a little over 6,000 Ghana cedis for a car that you never had benefit of because they have been impounded for the purposes of investigation and subsequent prosecution. So that's the state of affairs that my client has, gone through or endured in the past 4 years.
So is he now going to apply for those cars? It's been impounded for what, close to 4 years now. Is he now going to apply for the state to lift his hand on them?
Now that the charges, which forms the basis of having to detain those cars for this number of years, in the words of the special prosecutor. There are no longer any criminal charges against him. I think those things come naturally, that we will be asking for those cars to be released forthwith.
So for 4 years, he's paid for the loans for a
Yes.
car he's never driven.
Yeah.
The court says there's something called wrongful prosecution. Is there? I mean, is he gonna file something like that, or he's just letting sleeping dogs lie?
You cannot put monetary value on, your integrity or innocence. Remember that the special prosecutor first started the criminal charges with evasion of taxes, among other things. We applied to the court and indicated to the court that the office of the special prosecutor and the law establishing it did not create an octopus or a monster of an institution, an octopus looking everywhere for offense to investigate and prosecute. The maker of the law, that's Parliament, circumscribed what it can do or it cannot do. And so where you have a special prosecutor assume for himself the duty to be looking for tax evaders, when you have the Ghana Revenue Authority, among other things, the court rightly so agreed with us. And so the special prosecutor came with revised charges now relating to the use of public office for private gain. Evans, curiously, the investigation were done by the Economic and Organized Crime Unit. The then executive director of the EOCO had written to Societe Generale demanding for certain information, and Societe Generale provided that information to the effect that as far as they were concerned, it was a loan and the Honorable Member of Parliament was paid. So therefore, what was the public office, what was the private gain when the man is a loan that is paid? And Evans, let me put this on record. This piece of information was never disclosed to us until we applied to the court for this document to be disclosed. Why it was never disclosed to us, we have no idea. A lot of other matters have happened in the course of this particular case that once a nolle prosequi had been filed, I do not intend to go through. But quite clearly, if you study how the prosecution and everything went, the drama is in court. It was quite, not the best. I think we should all agree that we are organizing this republic on the basis of the rule of law, regardless of how I hate anyone or I dislike anybody or how I resent the person. Whatever you intend, whatever action you intend to take, it must first be grounded in law. If it is not, don't pursue it. Because if you do, you will be seriously embarrassed. We have come more or less to the dead end, where in the words of the current special prosecutor, he says to the court that he had studied the evidence, he has studied the docket, and he has come to the conclusion that one, the quality of evidence they have cannot meet the evidential burden of proving the guilt of the accused person beyond reasonable doubt. That's a very serious indictment on whoever conceived the idea of even starting the prosecution. That, without sounding like a clairvoyant, he can see these charges suffering the same fate as what happened in the procurement of the ambulance. What all of this should tell us is that regardless of how you intend to persecute anybody, regardless, a functioning democratic process should be able to put a halt to it so that people do not suffer unjustly. My brother, look, as far as this case is concerned, and I've been part of it from the time the Honorable Ayaga was brought first day to court to today. Even to travel for his ECOWAS parliamentary responsibilities, we have to go to court to get permission for his passport to be given. Immediately he's back, we'll take the passport back to the registry. That has been the state of affairs from 2019 to date. And so you can imagine the inconvenience that he has to go through. I don't think any Ghanaian should go through this. We cannot organize this country on these lines.
Yeah,
it matters not who is involved.
And very briefly, because of what you just described, he told me last year in May that he's forgiving Martin Amidu. And now that this is ended, final nail is in the coffin of these cases against him. Is he going to pursue any other case, as in the wrongful, malicious prosecution, or is he just going to let sleeping dogs lie?
Like I indicated earlier, you cannot put value to the liberty of an individual.
Yeah, okay.
Like we say, Evans, like we always say, vindication, they say, lies in the womb of time. Today, the Office of the Special Prosecutor has once again vindicated my client on the sole basis, and that is important, that the quality of evidence available cannot sustain those charges.
Okay. Eduji Thamaklo, thank you very much for your input in this. I recall 2 years ago, the Anti-Corruption Coalition had issued a press release and tried a press statement in which they complained about the lack of progress when it comes to the prosecutions at the Office of Special Prosecutor. They had also lamented why the office has been pretty slow in prosecuting the only cases that they had filed at that time, which was, of course, the Mahama Yariga case. Now that these two cases themselves have now all ended, I wonder what they make of this new development. Evans Mensah is with the Citizen Movement Against Corruption. Mr. Senanu, what's your reaction to what has happened today? Surprised at all?
Well, not really surprised. We over the period, we were concerned. We engaged with him, with the office. We recognized the gaps they had in logistics. I think part of the challenge was Mr. Amdu's own personal style, which meant that other agencies were not collaborating as much as they would have. It's a sad thing that none of the cases actually eventually amounted to much, but not really surprised.
I mean, this is the new special prosecutor's first day in court, and he decides to discontinue the last case of a man he succeeded. What does he say to you?
Well, on one hand, it could be that a certain message is being sent regarding the old occupant of the office. On the other, I actually would have wished that he picked on some of the other cases. I gather there are some 50, 60 cases that had been filed. So beyond these two, there probably is another 50 plus he could have picked and started something with. But whatever the case is, I'm sure he did his assessment and concluded that let's take this out of the space and then I can focus on what I should do. We're hoping we'll see a lot more traction, especially that he will get the manpower to be able to do the work. It's a lot of work. You need enough investigators. You need enough people to follow up on the legal issues. So if he can quickly get that out of the way so that they get to serious business and in this period get a lot more results, I think that's the more important thing for Ghanaians.
I'm grateful, Evans Mensah. News Night starts now.
across the country on myjoyonline.com and also on Facebook. In this edition,
any blood, and I mean any blood, that is spilled here in Cape Coast as a result of this confirmation process will only be on the hands of the president.
the stakes are high, and the NPP intends to use a vigilante group, the Invisible Forces, to force through the confirmation of the Cape Coast Metropolitan Chief Executive nominee, N.S. Arthur, who has already been rejected twice. That's the claim of 2 NDC MPs.
And that is why I think the DRA has to clamp down heavily on this particular offender so that it will serve as a lesson.
Well, also, Chairman of Parliament's Finance Committee back calls for the Ghana Revenue Authority to severely sanction its staff indicted in Joy News expose, revealing how process for acquisition of tax clearance certificate is compromised. We have details of that. And also in this package, Agric Minister returns to Accra with a basket of problems to resolve as his 8-day tour across 5 regions reviews some critical problems in the sector, particularly a nationwide shortage of fertilizer.
Before we got into planting for food and jobs, the average yield of a farmer in Ghana was just 3-4 bags or 50 kilograms per acre. Now I've seen it. People are making 20, 30, 40 bags an acre.
And then also tonight, Ghana's anti-homosexuality bill in the global spotlight, as some Africans show an unwavering stance against what they describe as imposition of Western values on the continent.
A homosexual have to go to jail for 10 years. That's a misconception you're peddling, and you should not do that.
They can go to jail up to 10 years. This is just one of the many penalties that is in the bill.
Larry, I would advise that you take a job at what you're doing. Okay, if you want to put a spin on a bill, right?
We bring you details of how some of them are reacting. I mean, Africans across the continent reacting to the controversial interview between Ghanaian Member of Parliament, St. George, and CNN's Larry Madowo. Stay for that. And later on the bulletin, we will take you to Tafi, Atome, in the Volta region, where monkeys are considered sacred, with some of them buried in special tombs in business.
National Petroleum Authority awaits government directive on the expected date for reduction in prices of petroleum products.
And later in sports, we'll bring you update from Harare as the Black Stars prepare to take on the Warriors of Zimbabwe for the second time in 3 days in the 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifier.
We have that and more in tonight's edition of Newsnight. You can join us with your comments and questions or any suggestions. As via WhatsApp is 055-1111-997. Also on Facebook, you can leave your comments there. I am Emefa Apau.
And my name is Evans Mensah.
And tonight, 2 minority MPs from the Cape Coast municipality have warned that President Akufo-Addo should be blamed if there is bloodshed during the confirmation vote of the president's nominee for the Cape Coast Metropolitan Assembly's chief executive position. N.S. Arthur has been rejected twice by the assembly members, and a third rejection will mean the president will have to nominate another person for that position. So the 2 minority MPs, Kweku Rikitagan and Kwamina Menta Nyako, have been holding a news conference in Cape Coast a while ago. Ricketts Hagan addressed that conference. Listen.
I would like to advise these responsible individuals to stop with immediate effect the meddling in Cape Coast Metropolitan Assembly elections. They have no business here in Cape Coast. The following people are the Transport Minister, Mr. Kweku Ofori-Esiama, the Regional Minister, Honorable Marigold Assam, Mr. Asamoah Boateng, former MP for Infanseman, who is now the Chief Executive of SIGA, Infanseman MP, Honorable Ophelia Kwanzaa, I believe, the NPP Regional Chairman, Chairman Kutin, the NPP Constituency Chairman, Mr. Abangansa. You can also say that he is in Cape Coast, so maybe he has a business in that. Any blood, and I mean any blood, that is spilled here in Cape Coast as a result of this confirmation process will not be on my hands. It wouldn't be on the hands of Honorable Minta Nyako, It will not be on the hands of the decent assemblymen. It will only be on the hands of the president and the hands of the perpetrators who have come to Cape Coast to ensure that they forced Honorable Enesata under our throats.
That's Ricketts Hagan there, one of the MPs that addressed that press conference today. We'll bring in correspondent Richard Kojonyako. He's been monitoring the situation for us. He joins us on the line. So, Richard, first off, we'll get into the concerns raised by the MPs, but the confirmation should have happened today. Why did it not happen?
Yeah, so MFI, we were all expecting that it should have happened today. It was announced last time during the second round of voting that the confirmation would be done today. But the assembly members say that they've not received any sermon. So usually when there is voting going to happen, they accept with sermons indicating the time and place and the business of the day. But to their surprise, today there is nothing like that.
The authorities presided over